Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Oh, sorry. I just had to close some on Windows. I'm good. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. So it's 2 o'clock now in New York.
Right.
How's the weather there? Is it cold?
It's pretty cold. Yeah.
Mm,
hmm
okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, tell me, are you in quarantine or in just normal lockdown at the moment?
No, we're like quarantined right now. It's not a hard lockdown. Actually, yesterday the restaurants opened inside dining again.
Yeah.
Because the numbers have been going down apparently.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but we're still cautious. So
Okay. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
hmm
And so you're a sax player.
Right.
Okay.
hmm hmm
Do you
How
play
did
in
you
a
find me? I was wondering, how did you find me?
well, Facebook?
I see. Okay, great.
Um, this is so amazing because I've been running this whole project on, I would say, good energy. When I started the project, I thought because I didn't know many people and I knew a few artists but I thought I will react to people who come on my timeline or on
hmm
my wall, not my
hmm
wall, my news feed on Instagram and on Facebook, and and I will react on what is suggested to me because I thought social media is like that it connects people.
Right.
And I knew that if I connected with people because I wanted to help the artists. I don't know if you saw this project where I photograph artists in their windows.
I saw it. It's a wonderful project.
Oh,
I
thank you.
love the whole idea what you're making.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
initially it started because I wanted to raise awareness that the
hmm
artists in Vienna are still at home.
hmm
And of course, as it went on and the more I learned and now recently I've been very interested in what happens also around the world because I'm writing about my experience now. And I thought, well, I know, from talking to the artists here what's going on, but I would love to know also what goes on around the world because many times I come to an artist home and then they would say things like, yeah, but we can be grateful because in America it's much worse, or they would say things like, my friend is in America, or my friend is in um, I don't know, Norway, or so. I realize that the artists are very much connected over the world, and of course they travel backwards and forwards and perform all over. So there's this strong community, I think, between you all, and I just wanted to understand also, what happens in other parts of the world,
I see.
which is very interesting, I must say. I hear very interesting stories and very inspirational stories. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, it's true. I mean, to be more specific, I'm like mainly a jazz saxophone player.
Yeah.
And yeah, the jazz scene, the global jazz scene is very connected.
Mm,
Very connected. Yeah.
mm,
And in terms of how it is in New York, I know that in New York, aside from the arts, so many businesses had to close down.
mm,
If you walk through Soho,
mm,
I would guess that about 30 to 40% of all, businesses are
mm.
closed down. You see all the signs, space for rent, lease
Yeah.
available, it's pretty empty.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we were always, since March 2020, we were pretty much mandated the whole uninterruptedly to wear masks. So they never lifted,
Mm,
that mandate to wear masks, for example.
mm,
We avoided subways or the subway for a long time.
mm.
But now I mean,
Now you
we
can,
rarely
but
leave
but
the house.
how was the jazz scene before Corona? Are you full-time musician?
Well, I mean, yes, you know, I mean, I also teach, you know, a lot,
Mm,
you know. I
mm.
actually had a pretty busy day already because I'm teaching at the Juilliard Prep Division, and
Oh,
I
okay.
taught 6 hours today already.
Mm.
So
Well,
yeah,
I spoke to
but
a
teaching is
Juilliard's.
part of it.
I spoke to a Juilliard's student a few weeks ago
You
about,
spoke to somebody?
yeah, and a pianist, yeah,
Oh,
and yeah, that was
oh,
also very interesting. But
mm,
I want to find out how you started in music. How old were you, and what did you play?
hmm, yeah. So I started when I was, well, I didn't really start learning the saxophone until I was 11, right?
Mm,
I started when I was 11, but I wanted to play since the age of 6, you know,
yeah.
because my parents or my family, they are not musicians, right? But
Mm,
they had a recording of the Dave Brubeck Quartet. I'm sure you
mm,
know Dave Brubeck. And it was like a compilation album,
mm,
you know. And one of the songs in particular really resonated with me. An arrangement of Leonard Bernstein's "Somewhere,"
mm. Oh,
and
yeah.
I just fell in love with Paul
Mm.
Desmond's sound. And I was 6, and then I really wanted to play saxophone, but my parents didn't buy me a saxophone until I was 11, so I had
Oh,
to
okay.
wait 5 years.
But is it?
And
But
yeah.
Lucas, is it possible to play a saxophone when you're 6? I mean, do you get a small?
Yeah, I mean, of course, I mean, everybody grows at a different rate,
Oh, yeah,
right?
yeah,
So I
yeah,
don't
yeah.
know how tall most 6-year-olds are, but you
Oh,
know, they're
yeah.
like sopranino saxophones. Like if you
Oh,
really
yeah,
want to make
yeah,
it work,
yeah.
you can
You
make it work.
can, yeah.
But those are hard to come by, you know, like the
Mm,
more common saxophones are a little bigger. Like
mm.
so for a 6-year-old might be pushing it a little bit, but that's exactly
But you had this,
what we were
yeah.
told.
You
Yeah,
had the
you
dream,
gotta
yeah,
wait, you know,
yeah,
until your
yeah,
teeth or whatever are, you know, I don't
yeah,
know. So I had to play recorder for like,
yeah.
I don't know, a year in
Mm.
elementary school. And yeah, I was happy when that was
Yeah,
done,
yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And at 11, I was so excited to start saxophone. So yeah, I started
Wow,
when I was 11, and
amazing. Yeah.
uh,
So it was the listening to the music, and that was what inspired you really. There was not a teacher or a
no,
somebody to
I heard,
inspire.
it's crazy. Like I heard Paul Desmond sound, and it was so beautiful to me, you know,
Yeah.
it was so gorgeous to me. And I couldn't stop listening to that
Mm.
track, you know? Yeah, but that's it.
Oh, that's
Basically,
amazing.
yeah.
Okay, and so then at 11 you started playing the sax, yeah?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
And you
And
were
then,
you in a
yeah.
music school?
Yeah, so first my mother would drive me once a week to a music school in Carinthia. You know, I'm
Mm.
sure you know I'm Austrian, right?
Oh no, I didn't know.
You didn't know I
No,
was Austrian? No,
I thought you
really?
were American.
No, I'm from Villach.
Oh,
So
okay.
we could be doing this in German too if you want to.
Well, it's good to have it international so that everybody could understand.
That's what I
Yeah,
was thinking
yeah,
too, right?
yeah.
And
Mm.
at this point, I'm almost more comfortable
Oh,
to
of
speak
course, because
English
you,
than
yeah, 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 yeah.
fake high German, you
Oh,
know, you
okay.
know. So yeah.
Yeah.
So she would drive me to a local music school somewhere in the
Mm,
countryside. I mean, I don't know how well you know Carinthia, but Weißenstein, it's a
mm.
super small
Oh, I
village.
don't know. Yeah.
And then I switched teachers when I was about, I think, 12 or 13. So I was
Mm,
only with my first teacher for like maybe a semester or two. And
mm.
then I switched to the music school in Villach. And then when I was 13 or 14, I switched to the conservatory in Klagenfurt.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and
Mm,
that's where I started, you know, with Michael Erian and Hannes Kawitzer, and you know, Harald Neuwirth was there back then,
mm,
Erich Bachträger, very intimidating kind of people when you're 14 years old,
mm.
especially Erich Bachträger.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, he was a very big guy, you know, like very
Oh, okay.
stern. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, so that was my path, yeah,
Mm,
in Austria, yeah. And then,
mm,
you know, my parents were really amazing because they, you know, as soon as they saw that I had some, like, a real passion for jazz, they were always researching a little bit, you know, where they have like winter or summer programs for, you know, people who are interested in
oh, okay.
jazz. So,
Mm,
you know, and then the whole thing with America kind of started to, you know,
Mm.
crystallized a little bit. I got a scholarship for a school in the States when I was 14. I got a scholarship for Berkeley when I participated, I think it was Freiburg.
Mm.
Some professors of Berkeley came to Freiburg and they were like on a scholarship tour. And
Mm.
that's how the whole idea was born to come to the States. And,
Mm.
you know, there were even thoughts of me quitting or finishing high school early to go to Berkeley, but then I just ended up finishing high school, no gymnasium.
Mm.
And I ended up going to the new school because I got a scholarship for that school too. And that's how I ended up in the States. Yeah. 15
But
years
then
ago.
you were quite young, 18 or 17 when you went to
18,
the States.
18,
Yeah.
18, yeah.
Did you go because of the jazz scene there?
Exactly,
There's a
exactly.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I wanted to study jazz where it was, I mean, jazz wasn't born in New York, but in
Mm.
America. So, and I knew that all of the greats, or most of the greats, were still in New York at the time,
Mm.
yeah.
Mm. And how did your parents feel with you leaving home?
Well, it was difficult, but
Mm.
actually that's something retrospectively that I can really appreciate about my parents, that they had, I mean, I teach a lot of 18-year-olds. I would not, let them go anywhere by
Mm.
themselves, So,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So,
Because
yeah,
yeah, New York is a big city. I mean, it's
yeah. Right.
yeah.
But I think they knew me, and I was just
Mm.
practicing all the time. So they knew I wasn't going to do anything crazy.
Without it. Yeah.
So, yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah. Mm.
And then so now that you are there, so you say you are now basically full-time musician and teaching
Right.
as well.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. So, yeah.
So
Mhm.
so lockdown, what time approximately was it in March also in New York
Well, I
that
can
they
give you
started closing down?
yeah, yeah, I can give you the exact, because actually we were on a vacation with
Mm.
so my girlfriend and I and another couple. Actually, they're not together. They were just, you know, two
Yeah,
other
yeah,
people.
yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we were in Puerto Rico,
Mm.
and I think we got back on March 12th, and the
Mm.
next day we went into lockdown.
Oh, okay.
So we yeah, yeah, yeah. It was already kind of a little bit of a precarious situation to go in the
Mm.
first place, but
And how did it affect you in at that moment? Did you have concerts or what do you call it, gigs?
yeah,
Or
gigs. Yeah, I had
yeah,
my
yeah.
last gig the night before we left for Puerto Rico. So I think
Mm.
that was March 8th.
Mm.
And that was my last live in-person gig,
Mm.
I think. Yeah, I had a bunch of, when the whole online thing started, people started to contact me for like, home recording, studio overdub work,
Mm.
but that's not really a live performance,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah. So March 8th was my
So
last.
did you have to cancel a lot of things then,
Postpone,
or
well, but postpone, but
oh,
cancel and
just postpone?
postpone. Yeah,
Yeah,
people
yeah,
were really like hopeful with the postponing, so things were
yeah.
like postponed 5 times, and now
Mm.
something that should have happened last summer is gonna hopefully happen in the fall.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I'm still scheduled for a few things. I'm scheduled to play in Vienna twice in June.
Mm.
Who knows
Mm.
if, I mean, I hope
Oh, so you still come here to
I
play?
come here. I come to
Okay.
Europe usually. I mean, in 2019 I was in Europe every month
Mm.
playing,
Okay.
yeah. So yeah, I do. And Asia, yeah, I play a lot in
Mm.
Asia, and yeah.
So in this time, did you continue teaching online, or how did you do it?
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
Julia switched over right away, basically.
Mm.
Yeah, and we never went back to, well, we did some kind of like hybrid
Mm.
teaching mode, but for my saxophone studio we never really um, switched to that hybrid
Oh, okay.
teaching mode or in person, so it's still remote. So
Mm.
everything I do is still remote. Yeah, also my private students is all
Oh,
remote.
remote.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm.
And how do you feel about that? Because it's this contact, or is it easier because it's an instrument, or do you still miss that contact with the students?
No, I miss the contact with the students, and
Mm.
I think to get certain aspects of like the instrument sound or timbre or whatever, you have to
Mm.
be in person, even with a great external microphone. But, I switched the teaching mode a little bit. It's actually, Zoom has many conveniences too. You can easily share screens or like recordings, so you have to use it for its advantages. And it's been helpful. Most of my students have adapted pretty well to that mode of teaching, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And what did you do? Because you, of course, I think we all have much more spare time now than we used to. Or did you find it as well that there were more hours in a day for you? Were you usually busy? So was there something interesting you did? Did you start a new hobby, or did you start cooking or baking, or?
Well, a whole bunch of things, because
really?
Also in 2020, I don't want to make Corona out to be like anything positive, but for me, it happened to be a little positive because I was in the last year of my PhD. So it really helped me to, really finish my dissertation, because if you're sitting at home, I mean, there's really no excuse, not to write your dissertation. So that consumed a lot of my time in whatever, like February, March, April, May, June, July, and in parallel, I published 8 books or something, method books, with all my time, and I started to take
that's amazing.
Chinese lessons, so I wanted to make the best out of it. And of course, I'm practicing a lot, because you can't come out of COVID and you don't know how to play the instrument anymore.
But how is the motivation with practicing? Because I mean, normally you practice for something, or do you find it difficult the motivation for it?
It's actually amazing because you're right. Usually, I feel like when you become like a professional musician or start becoming a professional, you start to practice more and more for projects, right?
Yeah.
But COVID has kind of afforded everybody, I guess, to think more about profound growth, incremental growth, rather than, let's get this together, because sometimes getting the stuff for these projects together might not even be the best thing for you to practice, right? So I've enjoyed that I can actually practice things that are really good for me in the long run, that kind of like growth you have like as a kid, when you're practicing. So I've kind of enjoyed that. And the motivation is, I don't know, I want to do a recording, in April or May. So I've been kind of like working towards some of that.
I've also heard musicians say this, that, they had time to focus on different repertoire, but also little things like finger exercises or something, I don't know much about this, but yes, I do hear this very often. And of course, everybody's saying that they were able to play more repertoire, or the repertoire that they not normally have time to. And that made me actually think about this ironic thing that even though it's locked down, which means it's sort of freedom taken away, it's given the musicians more freedom, because now you have the time to do these things that you normally don't have time for.
Exactly.
So so that could be a positive in that
absolutely sense. Like with my method books, I had all my teaching materials, in a million different places, and it was like a perfect opportunity right now to take the time to all, compile it into little, books or whatever. So I appreciated that a lot, about having all this time.
So your students, for example, that you have to deal with now, how is the mood for them? Do you find that they struggle a little bit because of they're young, and they used to maybe being together and performing together?
I mean, it's a very individual kind of situation, Some of them deal with it very well, but New York was extremely hard hit by Corona, right? So in some instances, there were also family tragedies because of Corona, and that obviously affected people, but most of my students are remarkably resilient, you know, even if there was a serious family tragedy, you know, a couple of weeks later, they're back at it, you know. And just the pressures of what it means to be a teenager in New York. You know, I teach at the prep division, so they're teenagers, so they're dealing with high school, and some of them are, you know, have 3 or 4 extracurricular programs that they're in, you know, because the pressure to get into university here is extremely high. Yeah, so sometimes I feel, you know, that high school, you know, age people here in New York are under more pressure than, you know, most professionals, I think, even, yeah, because so much is expected of them. There's so many opportunities for them, you know, and obviously parents want to make sure that they, you know, create the best options for them also. Yeah, so they always have a lot on their plate, you know, and so for them, I think it was almost like a welcome situation too, you know, because
I see.
the
Yeah.
commute in New York can be crazy too, you know. Some of my students have to get up at 5 to be at Juilliard on time, you know.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's easier to commute from your bedroom to the living room in that
Yeah,
sense,
yeah,
you know.
yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, yeah,
And stay in your pajama pants.
exactly.
Yeah.
Just wear a suit on top.
Yeah.
Yeah, 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 but
Um,
it's been, you know, they made the best out of it, I think.
yeah.
Yeah.
So Lucas, what is the feeling in New York about how the artists are valued? Do they feel valued? Do they feel supported?
This is funny, you know, because New York is such a money city.
Mm,
New York might have been a city of the arts. Yeah, but in my perception, the arts and New York don't really go together anymore.
really?
You know, because you got to have, if you want to live at a somewhat decent level and with certain quality of life, you know, it's impossible as an artist, you know, to make that kind of money here, you know. And then, you know, most people who do that, they travel all the time because all the well-paying gigs are outside the city, you know. I mean, obviously I'm not talking about people who have like orchestra jobs in New York. That's a special situation, you know, or the people who are lucky and have teaching jobs, you know.
Yeah.
But freelance performers, you know, for them it's very difficult in New York. I mean, I know world-class, you know, jazz performers or whatever, you know, who had to move in with like their family or whatever, you know, you know, and they're not young anymore, where you can say, okay, you know, they haven't figured it out yet. But
Yeah.
it's tough, you know. So it's
And
kind of like a
support.
weird situation with the arts in New York, you know.
Yeah. And support from the government, financial support.
I don't know if you heard about these stimulus, you know, checks. You know, I think there were 2 stimulus checks, and those were 2 one-time payments. I think the first one was $1,200, and the second one was $600. You know, but that's really nothing if you live in New York. You know, plus if you make more than $75,000, I don't think you get the full amount. And then many people started to collect unemployment who previously never collected unemployment. And I mean, I didn't do it, but I think initially they got 600 a week, and now it's completely empty, the pot. So now I don't think they have it anymore, you know. But yeah, so that's what a lot of people have been doing. And there were like these grants, you know, governments. It's not like in Europe where there's a lot of public funding for the arts. The whole American system, as I'm sure you're aware, is run through private donations, right? Juilliard gets private donations, and that's how
Oh, I
they.
see. Okay.
Yeah. So it's not really the government that's involved, you know.
And I also heard that of stories that artists have to sell their instruments.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in New York. Yeah, that's
Wow.
what
No,
I've
that's
heard
crazy.
from somebody. Yeah.
You know,
Uh,
I think Corona is uncovering the precarious nature of this profession. You know, it was precarious before COVID, and it's kind of uncovered a lot of that, because you see what people have to do to cope with it. But to me, it's amazing how so many artists were willing to live in such precarious circumstances up
Yeah.
until this point. You know, because I'm like a very security driven kind of person. I would never, you know, want to be, you know, in danger of being in my, you know, meeting my financial demise, you know. I want to stay
Yeah.
clear of that. And as an artist, there are ways to do that, I think, but it just shows me how many people were just okay living, freely. I call it freely,
Yeah.
but like,
Yeah.
I'm just not that way, but
Mm.
it is scary, because if something like COVID happens, then you really see how it
What
pans out for them.
how it
Yeah.
that uh
Mm.
mm. Yeah, that's very interesting, and of course that you say that some artists have had to move out of the city, and the Met also shut down. Yeah, is it
Right.
indefinitely, or do you know if they will open
Well, I
again?
know from the people that are, yeah, I know from the people who are at Met, I don't think they're even receiving payments right now, So I don't know about any updates in terms of when it's going to open up again. I don't know. I really don't know. They
Yeah.
were issuing updates for a certain while, but I haven't heard anything in a long while. Yeah.
I'm asking the question, if you think that maybe the answer lies in education. Now, you telling me that a lot of students, of course, travel and sacrifice a lot to get to Juilliard, but overall, do you think that maybe the fact that the artists are not and the arts are not so much supported and so much valued, that it can start with educating children, that we could educate children not just in maths and science, but also in art, so that art becomes a subject alongside these science and maths?
Right. Yeah. I think that's the hope of a lot of these enrichment programs. I think that is the hope. Yeah. I don't know how effective it is in the long run, but I think that's the strategy. Yeah. Have you heard about like STEM? STEM is like all the hard sciences, the natural sciences that you just mentioned. And, they recently sometimes add an A to that, calling it STEAM, to include the arts in that whole, yeah. But, I think music is actually so important, on as the intrinsic value of music is so important, that it should be in our lives, especially in hard times like COVID. I think many people would have had a really hard time coping without art and music. And so I think sometimes we shouldn't look for how does music improve my math skills or whatever, but how music is just intrinsically valuable. And I think that's really something that we should finally kind of learn. Plus music, yeah. I mean, the ancients and Greeks, they knew it. They really appreciated it. Yeah.
But it's in schools now, art is sort of just a side subject, or not a lot of time is allocated to it. And of course, this then a generation grows up who don't understand and don't have you come from a family where your parents encouraged you, but it could be that there are also children who don't have that advantage, who need that in a school, who need that from a teacher who would see potential, and not just for children to become musicians or artists, but also for children to be able to appreciate the arts and be able to experience and build these skills to that they can use for later in life. So this is something that I feel very passionate about, and that I thought about a lot in the time that I've photographed the artists and wondered, and also thinking about how you all started. This is very important, that you talk about that, because I think people don't realize this when they see you perform. They don't realize that you were a young boy of 6 years old who wanted to play the sax. So it's a long period of time that you worked on this art form to be able to produce what you give on stage.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, in contrast to what you're saying, and I'm not contradicting what you're saying, because I think it's
yeah.
very important what you're saying, but there is this saying, that kind of circulates, especially in music. Music finds you, you don't find music,
Oh, okay. Mm.
right? So I think some people are just, I mean, our neurology is different, right? That's why we're
Mm.
different. And I think some people's brains are just hardwired to gravitate towards music. And even if you teach somebody, oh, this is great because of X, Y, and Z,
Yeah,
they will understand it on a cerebral level,
yeah,
maybe,
yeah,
but I think the people who are really cut out to do this have some sort of like neurological or whatever predisposition for that,
yeah.
you know?
Yeah, I do agree, but I also think that for the children who don't become musicians or who don't become artists or dancers, isn't it a great advantage that you just get introduced to these art forms, the same as we get introduced to science and introduced in maths. It's not
Mhm.
necessarily that we all become mathematicians and scientists, but yet
Mhm.
we are introduced and made a little bit inquisitive to what goes on in these subjects.
Absolutely.
So this is what I wonder if maybe in this time we think about that, because this is also what I think about our politicians. If people blame the politicians, we have to think, well, some of the politicians are representative of that generation.
Mhm.
And could it be that when we educate children in a different way, that the future politicians will also then be the ones that take the lead and um, you know
Mhm.
show more support to the arts?
Right. I mean,
Mm.
that's kind of like another problem with that some politicians are notoriously uneducated. If
Mm.
I think about mayors of big Austrian cities, you know,
Mm.
barely a high school diploma.
Mm.
If I don't want to name any names right now, but I'm
Yeah,
sure
yeah,
you're
I
aware of,
understand what you mean.
so
Yeah.
and they're
Mm.
in very, very, I mean, powerful, important positions. So it
Mm.
would be nice if they have,
Yeah,
a
yeah,
minimum requirement of education, but that
yeah,
doesn't mean that you can't be a brilliant person without having like whatever a PhD or
yeah,
whatever,
yeah,
obviously. But
yeah. Mm.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, it's fascinating.
yeah. But so tell me, do you have a wish for when this is all over? How do you see the industry after Corona and after lockdown?
Yeah, I'm not a pessimist. I'm more a realist. I don't even call jazz an industry,
Mm.
but that's keeping it real.
Mm.
Mm, I hope it will go back to normal.
Mm.
I think people's thirst to travel. You know, I think
Mm.
there's gonna be many hurdles in the way to actually travel and perform and
Mm.
all of that.
Mm.
I think ultimately we'll return back to normal. Will just take a long time. I think
Mm.
potentially. So yeah, in jazz, since it's like an extemporized art form, you
Mm.
have to, for me to practice at home by myself is great, right?
Mm.
But since so much of the training involves reacting to things that happen in the moment that you can't predict, and I'm talking about very subtle things, like
Mm.
if the pianist plays a very specific chord voicing, did you hear that right away and you know how to react? You can't
Mm.
really practice that well at home. So,
Mm.
and Stan Getz already said that, in jazz, if you really want to play on a super high level, you just have to play all the time. And by playing, he doesn't mean by himself in a practice room, he means with other humans.
Yeah.
So I think
Do
that's,
you get that from the audience as well? Does that also influence your playing? That you
yeah,
okay.
yeah,
Mm.
definitely, definitely. I mean, you know, it's almost like, the audience makes you play better in certain situations, I would
Mm.
say, you know.
Mm.
But it's like the same idea as, you dress for success. You go somewhere because you want to look good or you want to look
Mm.
representable in front of an audience. You want to sound,
Yeah, yeah.
professional and good. If you're just playing by yourself,
Mm.
who are you sounding good for but
Mm.
yourself? So,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Do you think the audiences will change? Do you think they will, more people will suddenly, be interested in live concerts?
I don't know. That reminds me of that famous joke, like how many a rock guitar player plays 3 chords in front of 1,000 people, and a jazz guitar player plays 1,000 chords in front of 3 people.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay,
it's already in jazz, it's already been so difficult
yeah.
to have an audience in the first place. It would surprise me if that would change with Corona.
Okay.
After Corona, but who knows? Who knows? Maybe people are temporarily more thirsty for entertainment. But maybe,
Do you think the online presence that the artists now have, that they really make an effort to be online and to, play little things online? Do you think that will also make a better connection with an audience? That people now discover, of course, I discovered you now,
right,
which I didn't know, but it's possible that other people also would
right,
discover
yeah.
now. Yeah.
It is a double-edged sword, I would say, because on one hand we're giving our art away for free, in a time where there's no money to be made.
Yeah.
Which is, ludicrous. But on the other hand, it's a necessity because you don't want to be forgotten.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, people forget pretty quick. So you want to make sure you stay somewhat present.
Yeah. Do you know Simon Mulligan? They're in New York, the pianist.
No, is he related to Jerry Mulligan?
I don't know, but he plays. He's also on Facebook. He plays these little soiree concerts every night.
Wow.
From New York. Yeah.
Okay.
And he also gives the option for people to donate. I mean, he plays lovely, jazz, classical, and all sorts of things. But he does give the audience, the followers, the option to donate. But of course, in that sense, I also came across him, and for me, it's lovely to have that. I get that every morning when I wake up.
Oh, great!
Because of course, he posts at night, and then when in Vienna, when I open my Facebook, he comes on the news feed, and then I hear this little soiree concert. And yeah, and I've been thinking about that a lot, that's how musicians can actually touch people this way, that you normally, I mean, they would not have been a possibility that I knew of him, because he's in New York. But now it's more sort of approachable,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I think that's wonderful to hear that it touches people, what you
Yeah.
put out there in the ether. I think it's wonderful.
No, I definitely think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I think artists have to be careful not to put too much out there.
Mm.
Because I've noticed, with some people I've been following, and they are world-renowned jazz stars. The more they put out, the less engagement they have with their online following.
Oh,
and it's because people are so saturated with all this online stuff. So I think you have to be very careful how much you have to pace it, I think. So I think sometimes you get better benefits if you post once a week or something like that.
Yeah.
And get more engagement. What I've not done is doing like this virtual tip jar. I've not done that,
Oh, okay. What is the tip jar?
No, exactly what you're describing, where you can donate, like some people call it like a virtual tip jar, like where you can send people money through PayPal or Venmo or whatever. I haven't done that so far because I don't know. I mean, first of all, I'm lucky, and maybe I don't have to do it. But secondly, I feel like it's a very desperate kind of thing to do.
Oh, okay.
And I think that might hurt people in the long run.
Oh, I see. Okay.
You know what I mean? So because I mean, art is all about branding.
Yeah.
So you're a brand, right? And since it's art, especially jazz and classical music, it's a luxury product. You want to make sure that there's a certain price tag attached to that, because you only think of certain luxury products if there's a certain price tag associated with them. If whatever, I don't know, if Gucci is whatever, if they start selling all their stuff for $2,
Yeah.
their brand
Yeah.
name and reputation will be completely transformed. So I think artists should be a little weary of that, you know, how to go about this thing. I don't know. I love Thomas Gunn. She puts out great quality, amazing quality, and he doesn't do it too often. So I think
that's it. Yeah.
he's a great role model for that kind of like online donation kind of thing. But he's almost in a stratum of artists. He will always have a huge following because he has such a big, substantial following, but many artists don't. And, you know, for them, it's worth to think about all of these things, I think. So, yeah.
But you make me think now of a question. Do you think artists are not business orientated enough? You know, that they focus on the music and not really on the business side of it, and that it's really important that they also know of that side of things.
I mean, I don't want to generalize, right? Because there's, you know, and then there are the lucky few, you know, whose artists like so resonates with so many people that they really don't have to think that much about business, maybe because it just always works out for them. But those are the lucky few who have a charmed life. But yeah, I mean, it's also not something that's really taught well in colleges. If colleges have an entrepreneurship or music business class, they teach very abstract things that are really not that useful to, especially the current generation of artists.
Yeah.
You know, how do you make money through social media? How do you publish your own books? You know, how do you make money from publishing your own books? All of this kind of stuff, you know.
Yeah.
Or how do you license your own music to other people? What else can you do besides just playing music? You know, I think these things aren't discussed enough. You know, many people are still trained, you know, oh, I got to get the orchestra job. They're never going to get an orchestra job. Never.
Yeah.
So it's like,
yeah,
I guess it's too, what do you call it, myopic, the perspectives that are still taught too much, I think. Yeah.
But maybe in this time also there will be more of a realization of that, you know, that
maybe, yeah. Maybe I would hope so. I mean, I hope so. I mean, I could care less, I guess, but you know, hopefully for those people who are suffering right now, maybe they're thinking, you know, how could I improve my situation? But you know, it's interesting, people set themselves up in ways that they don't have to be financially dependent on their art. You know, they live off their partners, or they whatever, you know, they buy a couple of buildings somehow and live off the rent income or something. I don't know. You know, a lot of people have ways to deal with it. Yeah.
So, but thank you so much, Lukas, for your time.
Thank you.
And this lovely insight from New York. From the Austrian in New York.
Right. I thought you knew I was Austrian.
No, I didn't know.
No. Where are you from, actually?
I'm from South Africa.
Ah, because I heard the accent.
Yeah. I can't get rid of the accent. I lived in the UK for 14 years and still couldn't lose the accent. And now I live in Vienna. Yeah.
No, it's a great accent. Yeah, and Vienna is beautiful too. I would love to live in Vienna.
It's amazing. Yeah, and as I say, I've met the most incredible people here, and I feel myself really very privileged that I could, you know, and that they've invited me, and I've been invited for many coffees and for many chats through the windows and on the staircases, and yeah. No, it is really a wonderful experience. Yeah.
Great. Yeah.
So, but anyway, whenever you're in Vienna again, write to me. I would love to meet you in person.
Yeah, I'm supposed to play on June 18th and June 20th.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
maybe we can. You know. So maybe we could grab a coffee.
Wonderful. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay. Okay. Okay, Lukas. Have a lovely afternoon.
Thank you.
Yeah, hope to see you soon.
Likewise. Have a great evening. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.